Welcome. Please be seated. Welcome to SAT-7's Eurovision meeting in Copenhagen. Welcome partners and friends, both here in the Apostel Church and viewers online, from Denmark, Europe, Asia, almost all over the world. We are more than 100 enrolled, diplomats, academics, pastors, bishops, supporters, with all various backgrounds. Welcome to employees of SAT-7, here and out there. To the Apostel Church for housing us. Thank you so much to all the volunteers, and to Henning Larsen, who is organizing the streaming. My name is Synne Garf, International Director of the Danish Bible Society, and we are the host organization this year. SAT-7 is more needed than ever. The situation for Christians worldwide is critical. The discrimination against Christians and the freedom of religion or belief is seriously threatened. Corona has created even more tensions and insecurity for religious minorities. Some voice that the world is facing one of the largest persecutions on Christians ever. SAT-7 plays an important role for Christians through a variety of programs, church services, and by creating a fellowship for Christians online and through TV. Today we have invited a handful of knowledge capacities, professionals, who will tell about the situation of the Christians in MENA area, give you an insight of programs, and of how governments, NGOs, and private donors can support, and why Christians in other regions of the world are obliged to help. We hope that this Vision Day will be fruitful, inspiring, and engaging. We have a full program with a short coffee break at 11, Iranian lunch at 12:30. After that, we continue with the annual general meeting and celebration of 20 years since launch in Europe. To your knowledge and information, a photographer is present, Jesper. Please inform if you'd rather not have your picture taken. Before we get started with the program, I'd like to invite Reverend Niels Nyman Eriksen to make a short devotion in order to move forward in the right spirit. Please, Niels.
Good morning, everybody. It's a joy and honor for me to welcome you all to this house. I'm the local pastor and also pastor for migrants in this district of Copenhagen, Vesterbro. Would you mind that we start by singing a song of praise? I think we are seated in such a way that it would be responsible corona-wise. Otherwise, please make sure that you have a distance of 2 meters to your neighbor. Number 356. Almaks Gud velsignet være. It will be in Danish, but it's a very old international hymn. Before I share the word of the day, I'd like to introduce to you a couple of persons from our congregation that are here today. Yasin, will you please come forward? So, Yasin is a student worker in our church, working with social media in relation to Farsi-speaking people in Copenhagen and generally. Yasin has a very interesting history. Yasin comes from Afghanistan, but he grew up in Qom in Iran. His father is an Ayatollah, and he himself was educated in the history of Islam at the University of Qom, and he also has the title of Imam. It was in Qom that Yasin became a Christian through a dialogue with other students and through listening to Christian testimonies, and that took him on a long journey that so far has ended here, and it's a privilege that Yasin is with us on our team, and I just wanted to introduce Yasin so that during the day you'll be able to chat with him and to perhaps hear more of his stories. It's a privilege that you're with us today, Yasin. And the other two people I would like to introduce are the people in the kitchen, Siavash and Mona. They have been working really hard to create I think, wonderful lunch for us. I think Axel met with them yesterday afternoon, and they've been out shopping, and they've been cooking all night till after midnight, and then they were here again early morning, so they have really worked hard for it. They may not be here later, so I just want them to come in and to acknowledge that. Thank you. Please, Siavash and Mona, come in. And we just want to thank you so much for all of the effort you have put into making a beautiful lunch for this conference.
I hope everybody like it. Today we make a special food for Iranian food. Also,
what is the name of the food that you have made?
This is name for Iranian, named is lubia polo, lubia same rice, and I hope that you like it. Also, of course, sometimes people try. Also, I hope like it.
I hope we like it.
You're welcome. Have a nice day. Or God bless all. See you.
Thank you. You're welcome. I'd like to share with you a text, which is the text for the coming Sunday in our Danish evangelical Lutheran churches. It is the story of Jesus visiting Martha and Mary, Luke 10:38 to 41. As Jesus and his disciples went on their way, they came to a village where a woman named Martha welcomed him in her home. She had a sister named Mary, who sat down at the feet of the Lord and listened to his teaching. Martha was upset over all the work that she had to do, so she came and said, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to come and help me." The Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled over so many things, but just one thing is needed. Mary has chosen the right thing, and it will not be taken away from her." So these two ladies, Mary and Martha, they signify two different vocations, if you like. But also they signify two different aspects of the inner life of a Christian. Martha was facilitating other people's meeting with Jesus. Mary was having a meeting herself with the Lord. And when we work in church business, we are faced with the task of reconciling the rest of Mary with the business of Martha. It is not a choice between Mary and Martha, it's a question of how to combine the two. How to help Martha welcome Mary, and how to help Mary also respecting and accepting the place of Martha. So SAT-7 is also facilitating meetings between the Lord and people in parts of the world where those meetings are not very easy to facilitate otherwise. And that's a business. That's why we are here. But let's also humbly remember that we are here not just in that business, but also remembering that we are ourselves Marys who need to sit down and listen and receive from the Lord what we want to pass on to others. So let us pray. Our dear Heavenly Father, we commend ourselves and this conference into your hands and ask your blessing and your guidance and the inspiration of your Holy Spirit. This we pray through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you so much, Niels. And now I hand the word over to Henrik Milkstam, Chairman of SAT-7 Norden.
Thank you, Sune. Good morning, all of you. Good morning throughout Europe and the rest of the world. It's good to have the possibility to meet in person, like here. But it also is not a bad option to participate via the internet, especially these days when it's hard to travel and we have this situation with the corona. So thank you very much for having us here. Niels with the Apostelkirken, Synne with the Danish Bible Society, and all the volunteers. We're really grateful for this. So sisters and brothers, the gospel is needed more than ever. The good message. And today we're here to listen, to understand more about what SAT-7 is doing and how we can contribute. We're here to cast visions, to plan, but we're also here to celebrate. Because this is now 20 years since SAT-7 Europe, the Nordic countries, started with the what is now becoming the SAT-7 Europe, with Kurt Johansen in the lead. So throughout the years and through God's mercy and all the partners around Europe and Asia, friends, board, staff, we have provided thousands of hours with programming from different studios, seconded staff, volunteers, and listen, this is a fantastic number. More than 500 million Danish krona. That's 500 million Danish krona. That's 70 million euros in money from all of us, from partners, throughout these 20 years. 500 million, it's a large number. By celebrating, it's easy to look back and say, okay, thank you, Lord, for having, the opportunity to spread the gospel and so on, and we should take the time to celebrate, but we should spend time to look forward. And my simple belief is that the best days are ahead. So I think that should be something that we should keep in mind today, that God has fantastic things for us ahead. We believe that. So let's move on with the program. We have a very good program this year, we think. It was good last year, it's going to be good next year, but this year it's a fantastic program. So I will also pray before we move on. So, dear Lord, Thank you for this meeting. Thank you for all the partners. Thank you for SAT-7. Thank you for Rita and the team, Kurt, the volunteers, this church, Danish Bible Society hosting this. We're so grateful. And we're thankful for what you have done and for the things to come. So, in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Henrik Mikkelstein, for this very optimistic message. We will continue in that spirit. I have the privilege to introduce Rita Elmonaya, SAT-7 Chief Executive Officer. Now, Rita has served at the TV station as a host, program director, and is dedicated to the cause with all her intelligence and experience within programming. You will talk about SAT-7 right now and in the future. A warm welcome here in Denmark.
Good morning, everyone. It's so good to be here. My connection to Denmark and Sweden goes back to more than 25 years ago. I have a special heart for these countries, and a warm heart, even though the weather is cold outside, because from the beginning, when I start my journey with SAT-7 25 years ago, it was with Sweden first, and then the Danish stole me from the Swedes. So I continue producing the children program in KKR TV here in Copenhagen. But before that, of course, Sweden. So my connection with you goes deep, because I believe that God used every single person of you, not just by giving, like the money, as we heard from Henrik, like we raise millions of dollars, and thank God, for every single partner and friend. But I also believe that a lot of people from you prayed for us, prayed for a region that is scattered because of the war and the pain, a region where full of violence and disbelief, a region without hope. And because of you, we could make a difference in our culture, society, and also in the hearts of people who are longing for peace and knowing more about Jesus. So, as Sunni said, I am now, like after many years, responsible with the beautiful team of people dedicated to make a difference in the heart and minds of people in the Middle East and North Africa. And I feel so blessed. I feel so blessed each time, even when the hardship and hurt and the insecurities around us are big. I feel so blessed that I could see optimism and opportunities that we can make a difference in, in the lives of people. So SAT-7 is a bouquet of 4 channels, satellite channels, 2 for the Arab world, 1 of these 2 dedicated for children, and then a 3rd channel is at SAT-7 Turk, it's dedicated for people who speak Turkish, and the 4th is SAT-7 Pars, dedicated for people who speak Farsi for Iran. And as you heard from Yasin today, we have a lot of testimonies like this, of people wanting to know more about Christ through dialogues, through readings, a lot of times through miracles. Just a person in white appears and tells them, follow me. And our job and our mission, our ministry is try to point to them about the hope that nobody can take away from us. It's the hope and the faith that we have in Jesus Christ. We have many studios in the region, so we are people from the Middle East for the people of the Middle East. So we know the culture, we know the language. Iranians speak with Iranians, Turks will speak with the Turkish, Arabs will speak with the Arabs, because we understand the language, and we call it like the language of the heart. So you can approach people and tell them that I've been there. So we can give messages of hope Even when a big blast, like in Lebanon, what happened, because you can tell people, hey, I've been there. I've been through war, I've been through hardship, I've been through pain. That's why I can produce a program that speaks to your heart and give you the hope for the future. It's a beautiful theme, like looking for the future, because now we really should look for the future. But it's also an interesting year because we planned for the future and all our plans this year in 2020 were put in the drawer and then were put on hold a little bit. And this makes us think more and strategize more and ask ourselves, what will the future hold? And maybe the future will be more online thing, reaching the younger generation, but also the older generation or people that are scattered around, isolated because of the pandemic. But these are things that you will hear from other people today, producers, that we have for the Arabic and for other channels. They will talk a little bit about the future. But this interesting year, why? Because with the corona pandemic, I'm not gonna repeat. So what happened, the insecurities, people ask a lot of questions, but the interesting thing, and especially if people from the West, they told me personally that this is the first time we understand what does it mean to be a Christian isolated in our home. So now we understand the isolation of the church in Iran. Now we understand the isolation of the underground church in Algeria. And even, I live in Cyprus, one Greek friend, he's, Greek Orthodox, he said, Rita, also for me, I couldn't go and celebrate Palm Sunday. I couldn't go to church, on Easter Sunday, but also this is the first time I understand SAT-7. Because now I feel with all the people who are Christian in the region and they cannot go outside, not because of persecution, it's just because sometimes they don't know where to go. There is no church nearby. And here we are, a church in their homes, trying to encourage them. So this was like a really powerful message that we learned as SAT-7, and also that people who are supporting us, especially, in the West, understand what does it mean to be isolated. And you can see the dynamic of the interaction between the people who are isolated at home and our programs, especially programs we put on social media. So yes, we had in our strategy that we have to strengthen the social media and reach out to people. But I think also the lesson that we have learned that we have to make this plan go smoother and faster in order to reach these people at home. So in one night, or maybe in 1 week or 2 weeks, we had 500 times fold more people watching and interacting on social media. I mean, you will hear in the brand Academy. Academy is a brand where we have educational programs like my school program to reach refugees children and other children isolated at home. You will see that in that brand Academy, which is run on SAT-7 Arabic, you see like 4,000 more fold, compared to the same number last year. And this is really encouraging because I don't see it, I see it, it's opportunity. Opportunity, so even if we are far away and isolated, we could give something to these people and encourage them. And what about talking about PARS? I mean, with PARS, you can see PARS is the SAT-7 PARS for Iran, Afghanistan, and we have, the Farsi programs and some other dialect, like Dari and others. With this channel, more and more people are saying, and with the social media, they're saying that we don't feel alone. One particular person asked us, Can you believe or understand if you were not there for us, what will happen to us? Now we're sitting at home and we're not afraid anymore because we know that you are with us. And the best thing ever with what's happening in the region, with this, COVID-19, and with the blast that you heard in Lebanon, you will, watch a video, with that. You will see that every single producer or director said, we don't want to go home. We don't want to be isolated. We will take every precaution. We'll wear a mask, we'll wear our gloves, we will be like spray, like the building, the studios. But this is the time where SAT-7 is needed. And it was like fantastic to see a very dedicated team that consider this whole thing, this whole challenge as something to be taken, yes, seriously, but also to give the message, of faith and especially of hope and love. So, for instance, in SAT-7 Arabic, we created a program called You're Not Alone. You're not alone. We live like you. We're in the same boat like you. And please, hang on there because better days are coming soon. And before I show you a clip, I'll tell you, and maybe I'm a little bit biased because I started with the children program, in SAT-7 25 years ago and recording it in Sweden and then in Denmark. I have a heart for the children. And maybe because if some of you don't know my background, I come, from Lebanon, country of war, where I lived hardship and pain in my childhood. I had, a lot of challenges, and especially that lost dear ones during the war, and my dad was in a Christian militia. So these insecurities of a child living in the war, I lived them all. And that's why I have the heart for the children. And I believe if we want one day to change the Middle East, we have to start with children and young people. These are the future of the Middle East and North Africa. So with the children, it was amazing. Amazing with live programs because of COVID-19 on all channels. And we had live program for the children channel, SAT-7 Kids. And just children were expressing their fear because of COVID-19, is expressing their challenges because they don't go to school. And because of what happened in Lebanon, children were expressing their insecurities. And the beauty in all this, that children from other countries start phoning in and telling that we're praying. So you have a child from Palestine, a child from Egypt, another one from Algeria, another one from another, country. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was one Yemeni child just phoning in and praying for the children in Lebanon and for the situation in Lebanon. But when you look to their situations, it's also devastating, like what's happening in Yemen and other parts of the world, and yet they wanted to encourage other children. I will play this clip here. This is a famous presenter and producer that filmed with the children in Lebanon a message of hope. So I hope you enjoy it. This is how sometimes we try to have this escape mechanism by singing, by worshiping. But of course, it's not enough. Yes, we need to have faith. Yes, we need to pray. Yes, we need to give them like hope, but also we need to give and approach these children with all these post-trauma symptoms, with programs that address their problems. These, young adults, especially youth, with things that can help them practically to rebuild. So this is what we try, and with the help of the people like the MCDD and like Bible Society, Danish Bible Society, and other our partners who are helping us to address these issues, with all with scientific methods to help this new generation of people. I don't want to steal the thunder of the producers, because we have 2 producers on video. They're gonna talk about these approaches specifically and what we do for the people there. And plus the online packages that we're trying to have for people to access them freely, so they can watch in their own homes and houses, and then can be encouraged, and they can have a kind of a path or a way what to do when you're afraid, what to do when you have nightmares, what to do when, children are scared and, not being able, to cope with all the pain and the strategies around. And this is what SAT-7 have been doing, for many years. And I thank God for people like Kurt. Now I'm gonna embarrass him. People, you yourself, I know that I'll embarrass you, but you will not believe and you will not know how much we feel blessed as Middle Eastern, knowing that people who are not Middle Eastern care about us. When I care about, my people, I'm Lebanese, I care about Lebanese. Iran, you care about Iranians. Afghanis, you care about. But when you see, people like you wanted to make a difference, it's really great. So one of them is Kurt. Thank you very much, Kurt. God bless you, and bless you all. I will finish with one thing. The future will be more of addressing issues regarding education. The future will be more of addressing issues regarding freedom of religions and speech. The future will be more addressing issues regarding women. The future will be more addressing issues regarding especially children and youth. The platforms will vary, maybe more on, online, maybe satellite, maybe on demand, like Netflix and others, and these technical things. I'm not gonna go for technicalities. I'm gonna go with the content, because whatever you do, content is king. As long as you're giving these people, helping them, and giving them this faith or this hope that will be transformed one day to be faith, and transforming the region to a better region, I think we are and we will be on the right track. Thank you.
Thank God for Rita. Thank you so much for your dedication, your hard work, in spite of challenges. Thank you so much. Now we will hear the latest news on SAT-7 Academy. There we go. No, it's okay. It's okay. Just a few words. The idea of the programs is to provide Arabic-speaking viewers from all parts of society with complementary educational opportunities. So, Juliana Sveier is Academy Brand Manager and will enlighten us through a video. So, welcome, Juliana.
البرنامج بالنسبه لي حاجتين، تحقيق لحلم كبير. الحلم التاني اللي اتحقق ان القصص الكتابيه اللي بيسمعوها الولاد في مدارس احد
يخشوا معانا ويكلمونا ويتصلوا بينا ويبعتوا لنا على الفيسبوك ويبعتوا لنا رسائل على الواتساب ويبعتوا لنا مواعيد. وكانوا كلهم يعني programs. Hi, this is Juliana. I am the brand manager of Academy Programs on SAT-7 Arabic. But more recently, I have been on the ground reporting as SAT-7 responded on the air and on the ground to the horrific explosion in Beirut. The Lebanese people today need hope. They have lost hope in the future. Responding to crisis across the Middle East and North Africa is sadly something SAT-7 is getting better at. And although my presentation may be different to what I had planned, my message is the same and more urgent than ever. We need to support the Arabic-speaking youth across the MENA region, the Middle East and North Africa, to become resilient, tolerant, and peace-seeking citizens today and the leaders of tomorrow, of course. We need to help them carve out spaces to connect with each other, allow them to have a choice, allow them to have a voice to build a future, despite how fragile and fragmented their communities are. The crisis engulfing Lebanon, from coronavirus pandemic to the economic collapse to the desperate situation after the explosion, has left 300,000 homeless and countless lost loved ones, besides those who indefinitely left Lebanon. Lebanon, the beacon of hope and stability in the region, is facing challenges like never before. In Yemen, families are starving. In Iraq and Syria, the future is bleak. The refugee families in Lebanon who fled here for safety have found they have been left without nothing all over again. The challenges are tremendous. This is why SAT-7 needs to be here. This is why Academy is crucial, and nothing reminded me more clearly of this than the youth of Beirut in these past few weeks. Just 2 days after the explosion, I went to the site to film for SAT-7 a report. And as I was filming, fighting back my own tears and feelings of desperation, I saw hundreds of youth walking in the streets, carrying brooms and shovels, youth from all over religious backgrounds. They were working together to clear the streets of Beirut. They were cleaning Beirut. I had never seen anything like this before. Youth cleaning, distributing food, helping the elderly. They recognized we were from SAT-7 and offered us food and water. They kept on saying, God keep you safe, thank you for the work you do, we love SAT-7. That was very touching. This resilience through education, understanding of rights, promoting freedoms and tolerance is something that we have been striving to build in children and the youth across the Middle East and North Africa. Promoting life tools and cooperation across communities is exactly what we have always been about. And there, amidst the destruction, right in front of me was hope that these seeds had taken roots at last. Moreover, it was the clear indication that the work we do is needed now more than ever. It was this desire to show children that their society could be different if they built it together, which was the drive behind the creation of one of our flagship programs, Puzzle. You've heard and understanding on how society could be a different place. For each child, no matter what religion, ethnicity, or gender, all having a role to play, of course, all important pieces of the puzzle that make up a strong and healthy society. Here is a short clip of what happened when we first created Puzzle. Once we finished the first episodes, the kids had to go back on the bus. We were shocked to find that there's a whole group that refused to take the bus. When we checked what was the issue, they said, no, please leave us here. كل مرة يجي يخلص التصوير يجوا لعندي يقولوا لي أنا أمتين دوري أمتين بدي أجي مرة تانية. We want to stay here, we want to play with each other. And by each other, I really stress on people from different backgrounds. They wanted to play with the Christians and the Muslims. They got attached to each other. They got attached to the crew, to us. I caught up with some of the children after the explosion to see how they were coping with what had happened in Beirut.
اشتقت لكم كثير. صرنا زمان ما شفنا بعض، قد ايه صرنا سنة؟ سنة؟ يا ويلي، شو صار فيكم؟ سنة كلها انه كورونا وصار انفجار يعني ما. كيف كانت المدرسة هالسنة؟ خبريني. منيحة، مش كثير. رحتي على المدرسة بانتظام ولا وقفت؟ لا وقفنا. هالسنة أكتريتها مش منيحة، بلشناها بمظاهرات وبعدين صار في كورونا وهلا انفجار.
خبريني شو أخذتي معك من بازل؟
انه حلو انه كلنا نوثق كفريق نوثق ببعض انه نحن قادرين نعمل هيدا الشيء، وكانوا كلهم يعني انه كيف بدي اقول لك انه بيعتمدوا على بعض، مش انه خلص انه هي مش قادره تعمل خلص يعني هيك، فانه كان شيء كثير حلو انه كنا كلياتنا عم نتعاون. يلي قدرت طبقه من بازل انه يكون عندي رفقه من غير جنسيات، مش بس من الجنسيه اللي انا بعرفها.
اخذت من بازل انه نكون كلنا يد وحده ونتعاون مع بعض، وتعلمنا اشياء كثير حلوه، وتعلمنا كيف يكون في بيناتنا محبه.
بازل كان برنامج كثير حلو، وتعلمنا كثير اشياء مثل كانه محبه الاشخاص الثانيين، نحترم ديانه الاخرين، واذا كان شخص جنسيته غير جنسيته نحترمه ونحبه.
ولما صار الانفجار شو شعرتي؟ كثير خفت لان كنت لحالي بالبيت وكنت حقوقها من البرندة، اختي انكسرت اجرها وايدها، فبتمنى انه هذا الشيء ما عاد يصير، لان العالم وين عم بتروح، لان في شخص عم ينام بالشارع، لانه هلا ما صار عنده شارع. اليوم رح تعمل مبادرة انسانية، نحن نازلين على مرمخايل، على المنطقة الاكثر شيء منكوبة ببيروت.
هون ورا راسي كل جسمي.
What happened in Beirut is an added layer of loss, trauma, and challenges for the children here. Children across the Middle East and North Africa were already dealing with crisis and chaos anyway. And then the pandemic arrived early spring. And then as the lockdown happened across the Middle East and North Africa, we worked around the clock to ensure that children and parents who were at home also had the physical, psychological, educational support needed to cope with this new reality.
Salut tout le monde, vous allez bien? C'est Carole, votre prof de français. أنا مثلكم قاعدة بالبيت من ورا فيروس كورونا، بس نحن مكملين online.
We went online. We stayed at home. Whatever was needed to continue working and reaching the children wherever they were, we did it. More than 1,000 educational videos in Arabic were shared via our social media platforms. And my school teachers, the backbone program for Academy, these teachers ended up going live 5 times a week. At the end of May, we even launched what we call the Saturday Language Medley, an event online with live classes in English, Arabic, and French, all happening one after the other, that we reached over 160,000 children across the Middle East and North Africa. Now, with Puzzle, we worked with our partner on the ground, the NGO Right to Play. and humanship, to identify specific games from the program that could be adapted to be played at home with siblings and parents. So together we issued instructions how to adapt the games and facilitate a discussion within the family on what skills were learned. This was combined with an awareness campaign on health and hygiene. The campaign was targeting all children, even those living in particularly challenging circumstances such as refugee camps or host family situations where social distancing and restrictions on movement made life increasingly difficult, as you know. The games were posted on Right to Play's Facebook page too, and many testimonies were received from children telling us that they did not know about basic hygiene. And the videos had a huge influence on parents who were happy that their children learned about hygiene measures and health matters. The response from our audience was incredible, confirming all the way that the developing programs we were using to support them and their families was the right way to go. Academy audience relations contacts increased by 4,014% since the lockdown. We started to have 5 days per week live for the teachers of my school on Facebook, and each month we launched our Saturday language medley, including French, Arabic, and English. The social media engagement has seen a 400% increase. Before the lockdown, we were receiving around 800 messages per day, but now we receive around 3,000 messages. It has been extraordinary in so many ways. New partnerships have been developed with local NGOs, and existing ones have been strengthened as we are all determined to work together to support the children and the youth. This coming together for the pandemic set a precedence for a mutually supportive response to the Beirut explosion. Immediately, we reached out to each other to see how we can support the children and youth. I don't remember a year ever in my life that has witnessed darker moments or has equally been a reminder of how important the work that we do at SAT-7 with Academy. I'm a child of war. I lived through the civil war in Lebanon and the wars that followed. Yet what happened at the port was something that I had never experienced before in my whole lifetime. After the explosion, I had enough and was ready to take my family and leave the country. But when I saw how the youth were on the streets helping clear up and encourage each other to keep going, I thought to myself that if the youth of Lebanon are willing to contribute to help each other and their community, why should I be depressed or discouraged? If they are willing to work to rebuild their country, who am I to give up? Or say it's not worth it? I have no doubt from the prayers of support that have poured in from other young people across North Africa and the Middle East. From the engagement we have had on our Facebook during the time of COVID-19, ongoing as well, that these young people, I have no doubt that these young people of Beirut are just a small part of a whole generation of children and youth across the Middle East and North Africa who are just as desperate for change and in need of support to become equipped to face the challenges that will no doubt happen in the future. They love their countries and communities, and we need to help them all to keep looking to the future with hope and give them the tools to create opportunities, to work together to build it. This is why we need to stand alongside them. We must respond to the needs of the next generation. It is our duty. We need youth programs. We need to give them the food for tomorrow. We need to allow them to express their opinions and pass on the torch to them as the leaders of tomorrow. Let's help them build up their resilience, their hope, and their strength today more than ever. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for listening to me. And thank you for letting me share the voices of the youth of the Middle East and North Africa. Thank you for your prayers. May God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Juliana Sver. You are impressive. I met you last year. I'm just talking to you right there because you are so bright. You can just feel her energy, right? So, and you have so many frontliners. You're really out there on the first front line and you stay there. Very impressive. And I met I was in the studios, not going to make a speech, but I met the children, and they were so interacting, some Muslims, some Christians. So this was really interfaith dialogue on a very high level. Thank you. Now it's time for a Danish angle. So Philip Buff Petersen and Daniel Nygaard Madsen are from Danish Mission Council Development Department, a very long word. It's not always easy here. You will talk about SAT-7 and freedom of religion or belief, please.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. As just introduced, my name is Philip Buff Petersen. I work for Danish Mission Council Development Department. We administrate some funds on behalf of the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs for Danish churches and church-based organizations who work in international development cooperation. Yes. I'm very humbled to be able to stand here. I'm very humbled to see all the good work that SAT-7 do around the world, around the MENA region. I hope that this presentation that Daniel and I will give will be a story of a journey seen from our side here in Denmark that can inspire other partners around Europe to see possibilities that can link in with the great mission that God has given SAT-7 and the work that they do. In Denmark, we have experienced quite a bit of interest in the area of freedom of religion belief. We started out in 2014 in relation with an open hearing in Parliament with the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where we asked Christians about what are Denmark doing about persecuted Christians, what are Denmark doing for freedom of religion belief, people who are being discriminated against due to their religion, their belief, and asked whether we could do a better job. And a lot of Danish organizations took that opportunity to sit together and say, can we actually influence this? Can we inspire politicians, decision makers to make a difference in this area? Since then we have seen a creation of a freedom of religion and belief forum. That was all the organizations that were there. Many of you people here in the room and also listening were a part of that. And we started working on this. Some of the results, just quickly, is that from 2014 and onwards, we had a full-time employee working for the Special Rapporteur on freedom of religion and belief with Danish support. We created a network of parliamentarians in the Danish Parliament that were all interested in how can we secure, protect, promote freedom of religion and belief for all. We now have a unit in the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, thanks to one of the politicians who put in a great work to secure that we have a unit, a person in the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs who could actually help mainstream freedom of religion and belief within Danish foreign policy, Danish development assistance. We experienced in DMCDD that we got an extra increase of our project funds, among other things, for freedom of religion and belief projects. And as you see there, in 2020 we got a little window that all organizations, no matter what faith they belong to, they could apply for funding for projects to support local work done by partners around the world to protect, promote freedom of religion and belief. So why are we working on freedom of religion and belief? We could be working on many other things. First of all, freedom of religion and belief is important to us. It's something that shapes us, our ethics, our values, our norms, also the way we act. So having a freedom to actually express yourself based on your belief, to have and hold your belief is key. We had many partners around the world for our member organizations who testified of Christians being discriminated against. They were persecuted. They didn't feel they had the same opportunities as other citizens in their country. So that was a response to what the partners said. Freedom of religion and belief as an approach, we found that was easier to communicate to politicians here in Denmark, that it was easier to get a wide spectrum of politicians to support the idea and thus having a greater impact. Another thing is that within the midst of our member organizations, we've been working with a human rights-based approach. That was something we were used to do, and we've been working on dialogue, but sometimes we've seen that the dialogue as an instrument, as a way of change, wasn't that strong. So by making it into a human rights-based approach, where you include both the right holders, the believers around, and you include the governments, the authorities in the country, making sure that they live up to their obligations to people, that was a good way of creating change. So what is freedom of religion and belief? Shortly presented, freedom of religion and belief is short for freedom of thought, concise, and religion. It's formulated in Article 18 in the International Covenant for Civil and Political Rights. It's freedom to have and to change your religion. It's freedom to manifest, to practice your religion, and it's freedom from coercion. It's freedom, protection from discrimination, and freedom of religion or belief also give you the right as a parent to raise your children in your belief, in your religion. It also gives the children the right when they grew up to define their own belief sets. So there's a balance there to be made. And then it consists on conscientious objection. You have the right to deny to be a part of the military if that's something in your belief, for instance. So that was a short, this is actually what freedom of religion and belief is about. This is what we mean when we say freedom of religion and belief. Having this focus is not only a Danish trend. As many of you know, us Danes, we are kind of behind what's going on the global scene sometimes, but we try to catch up on different things. The Norwegian government has increased their funding for freedom of religion and belief projects. In 2017, they have like twice as much as the Danish government give to freedom of religion and belief in Norway. So you Norwegian partners, you do have some good opportunities here to work with SAT-7 to tap into some of the things they're doing already. As you can see here, Germany, UK, Netherlands, many other countries do have an ambassador for freedom of religion and belief, or a special envoy or something like that. So it's not something that is particularly Danish. It's a trend that you can see in many European countries that actually is something that we can tap into as SAT-7 partners and supporters. Countries are increasing their funding for these projects. Same thing applies for the EU budget. One of the things that we've done out of a Nordic cooperation is making a thought learning platform, because many times we see that people, they don't understand or know the right to freedom of religion and belief. What is it all about? How can I get access to justice on these issues? So therefore we have made this thought learning platform. SAT-7 is one of the partners, and are one of those organizations that take this learning platform and use different elements from it to advance freedom of religion and belief in their work. Yes, and now to my colleague Daniel.
Thank you so much, Philip. I don't want to go into much detail with these projects because Juliana, you already did very well in introducing Puzzle, but and I think Maggie will be speaking after the tea break, so perhaps she will speak more about Needle and New Thread. But that is the first program that SAT-7 did on freedom of religion or belief and targeting women in the MENA region. And so it was both on freedom of religion or belief and women's rights. Then we have Puzzle, targeting children, as Juliana introduced so beautifully. And then we have Insiders, which is the newest program, and that is on SAT-7 Pars, which is now in a region that is very hard to access. And I think you will hear from Nils's friend later today as well, his story from Afghanistan and Iran, and see how relevant it is to promote exactly freedom of religion or belief in that context. And that is currently being implemented. Now, I would like to give you a little bit of inspiration from a learning initiative that was launched last year in July in Africa. And from there maybe give you 3 challenges to look at as SAT-7 and as partners of SAT-7. So last year we engaged with Program for Christian-Muslim Relations in Africa called PROCMURA. It's an organization that has been engaged in Christian-Muslim relations for more than 50 years. And some of our members, Mission Africa, Henrik is here, and Dan Mission were already partners with PROCMURA. So we decided that this would be a good way to start engaging with freedom of religion or belief and learning how can we promote this right together with our members and their partners. So this learning initiative is going for 3 years, and it was launched last year in Nairobi. The overall goal of PROCMURA is to see an African continent where Christians and Muslims uphold the principles of religious freedom and all that it entails. That is constructively related to promote peace in the society and peaceful coexistence between Christians and Muslim communities, jointly respond to environmental challenges. And I want to show you a little clip that I made myself, and I may embarrass myself here in this forum. So please only evaluate this in terms of the cost effectiveness of the video. But I just spoke shortly with Dr. Mbila, who was the former general advisor of PROCMURA at this conference in July last year. And listen to him, please.
I am Mrs. Evelyn James Dicam. I am the General Secretary for the Council of Churches.
Consultant of PROCMURA. It's been an eye-opener, you know, the conference. The overall goal is to see an African continent where Christians and Muslims, and for that matter everyone, upholds the principle of religious freedom and all that it entails, which suggests that religious freedom must also provide permission for people to change if they so wish. So my own issue, especially from Sierra Leone, is not with the people but with the politicians who are using their power, their greed to divide us. And with a program like that, it should open our eyes, make us understand more, and know that it is not a religion but just a bunch of greedy people. So this knowledge I will take to the Christians, the Muslims, the Pentecostal in my country, and we will talk about it. And I think we might even invite some of the politicians to let them aware that we know what they are doing and we are not going to tolerate that.
So from this, 3 learnings that we're taking. First of all, and I'm going to translate this into some few challenges to SAT-7. How can SAT-7 further integrate the promotion of FORB in its internal program strategies and organizational development. I think it's a huge strength if you are able to do this from within. Not because it's a human right or funding opportunity, but because this is part of your mission and vision. Like you're saying, when you want to bear witness to Christ in the region, what does that mean in terms of freedom of religion or belief? How do you bear witness to Christ in doing that? When you want to promote hope, what is the hope in freedom of religion or belief? When you want to make the invisible visible, like freedoms, how can you make this freedom visible? So how can this be even more integrated? I see that how it is already coming, but maybe even more. How can SAT-7 contribute to more intra and interreligious unity in matters relating to FORB? Like this lady from Sierra Leone was saying, that oftentimes it's the politicians that are trying to divide us in this. And many times it's actually possible to have these interactions across religious divides, intra-faith and interfaith, on these issues. And I think like Puzzle is a very good example of you can actually facilitate that. And you can create unity around the issue of freedom of religion or belief. And that makes you very much less vulnerable to politicalization of these matters. Finally, how can members and partners of SAT-7 contribute to the promotion of FORB? After this launch in July 2019, there was a conference in Cameroon in February where Christian and Muslim leaders from 5 different countries in West Africa met. One of the delegations came from Mali. And this year we have granted a small grant for a pilot project to another partner in Mali who are now trying to further this case and try to implement part of national action plans coming out of this project. And I think that's a core learning thing, that this is not something you can do on your own. Freedom of religion or belief is such a complex matter, and you need to cooperate with a lot of different stakeholders in order to make a long-term difference. I think you're already doing this with NGOs in Lebanon, with Humanship and Right to Play. Maybe they are all of you have connections to other partners, like Philip was saying. Governments around Europe is taking this on, so there are also opportunities for other corporations. And I would just encourage all of you to think of that. Is it possible to cooperate with more people in these complex matters? Those were the 3 challenges and encouragement from here. And thank you so much for the time.
Thank you so much, Philip and Daniel, for enlightening us on FORB, complex stuff, freedom of religion or belief. I've heard that we had some technical challenges with the streaming. It's better now, so just to your knowledge. And now it's time for a coffee break. And we're ahead of time, so that's nice. So why don't we take a 20-minute break? So please be back here at about 11:05. 11:05. Coffee and fruit is served here. It's time to continue. Please be seated. Welcome back from coffee break. We know that many women are struggling and are challenged in the MENA region. SAT-7 has for many years taken a serious responsibility in order to give women a voice, to listen and empower them. Maggie Morgan is producer of SAT-7's women's programs in Egypt. She is with us on video and will talk about SAT-7 women, my dreams and aspirations.
Hi, my name is Maggie Morgan, and I'm an Egyptian filmmaker, and I'm the producer of a program called Needle and Thread. It's a women's program that has been running on SAT-7 for 7 years. We stopped this year. We decided it was time for us to pause, to take note of all the things we had achieved throughout the years, to reflect on our relationships and understanding with our viewers, to notice what we've learned from them, to also build on many of the partnerships we've forged over the years. So it was time for us to take a deep breath and stop and weave all these threads together.
فكرنا في موضوع الحلقة وتعرض موضوع الحلقة. نعم. واحنا نتكلم في الموضوع ده ازاي؟ ده الموضوع ده طول الوقت احنا بنداري عليه لانه لا عيب ما ينفعش ما يصحش.
انا بحب الكلمه دي قوي لانها وصم يعني استجمة، يعني ان المجتمع بيوصف حاجه معينه كانها غلط.
البنت مشروع زوجة، فدايما خايفين على المشروع ده من وهي عندها 5 سنين.
ده اهم مشروع في حياتهم.
ودايما البنت يقول لك شرف البنت ده زي اللبن، اي حاجه تعكره، انما الراجل مش مهم. الناس ما بتدقش.
بنحط بعض التاتشات الجمل اللي ليها علاقه بالدين غلط. ربنا عايز كده، نقول لربنا لا يعني، فدي جمل بتتقال
انه دي كانت اراده ربنا.
ايه ده كان ربنا، طبعا كارثه لانه طب انا
سنين مليانه بالجدل والنقاش والتغيير.
There are many milestones over the years of Needle and Thread, some of them that I'm very grateful that we've had the opportunity to work on and to do. One of these first milestones is that we worked on an episode and we did short clips on Sudanese refugees living in Egypt, and we were one of the first, I think we were the first Arab program to ever talk about discrimination against people of African origin.
هنا لما تروح في الشارع المصريين يضربونا، نروح بلدكم وسخة، ما تشتمونا يضربونا.
أو تحاول إنك يعني لما يقول لك مش هتقول أي كلمة، ليه؟ لأنك أنت حد أجنبي.
بيضربني من غير أي سبب، من غير ما أسأله ولا من غير ما أعمل حاجة. بيضربونا في شوارع وحاجات كتيرة بتحصل.
يرموا عليكي طماطم وحشة، أي حاجة وحشة بس كده وبايظة يضربوك بيه.
واكتر حاجه بنكون معديين كده في الشارع عادي ممكن يرشوك بالميه، يعني انت لابس ابيض يعملوا فيك ميه.
This is something that is really rampant in Egypt and all over the Middle East. And those videos went viral and we really created a stir. Some of the major newspapers in Egypt talked about this issue and they said this channel called SAT-7 is the first one to talk about this issue of discrimination against Africans. Another thing that I'm very proud that we did is that we hosted a series of episodes to talk about the role of men in their families and how men are not just the financial providers, but that the role of fathers in families is crucial and important to raising healthy young men and young women.
عارفه انت بالظبط لما حد يضرب طفل وبعد كده يقول له انت السبب اللي خليتني عملت كده؟ الطفل بيطلع عنده رساله بتقول له ان اي حد يغلط فيك العلاج ده هو الضرب، مش انك تعبر عن نفسك، مش انك تحط حدود صح، مش اي حاجه تانية.
One of the things that we were very conscious about doing from the beginning is that we wanted to have a platform that was for everybody. So we were very conscious about inviting guests who were from all faith backgrounds and who were from all walks of life. The motto or the slogan of the program is that is a quote that the glory of God is a human being fully alive. And so whatever topics we discussed, we wanted to include voices from different parts of the community, from different religions, from different faiths. And this is very important. It's one of the things that makes Needle and Thread what it was, because it was a platform that was safe for all viewers. And we feel that including all voices and being a safe space without judgment, encouraging freedom of religion, freedom of belief, but also freedom of expression, and a big stance on acceptance of all opinions. I think this kind of policy, if you want to call it a policy, but this attitude on the part of the team behind Needle and Thread made a big difference, and it increased our viewership to different parts of the Arab world. We had viewers from Yemen and viewers from Iraq, viewers from Syria, a lot of Muslim viewers, because we were not talking in language that was hard for non-Christians to understand. We worked very hard to destigmatize the notion of Christian television. This one thing I would say is one of the dearest things to my heart, that a lot of people from different backgrounds consider Needle and Thread a program that speaks to them and that resonates with them. But most of all, we wanted to talk about how to change and what makes people change, and people's mindset and people's beliefs, and we're very dedicated to that.
المجتمع هيتقبلنا لو غيرنا المعتقد الديني. انا طبعا ما حبيتش اقول اسمي او اي بيانات لان ده مش هيتقبلوني وقد يعرض حياتي للخطر. دايما انتوا بتناقشوا موضوعات مهمه جدا، لكن واشكر ربنا ان ما عندكمش خط احمر.
One of the key topics in 2019 was freedom of religion and belief and freedom of expression, and a lot of people didn't understand why go there, why talk about controversial issues, why go to the thorny grounds, and that is true. I mean, these are hot topics. They're not hot topics just because they're controversial, but because they're the things that nobody wants to talk about. And in sectarian societies and communities like the Middle East, it's just religion and differences in faith and differences in opinions, and all these things, for many reasons, are the things that people do not want to talk about. The reason why we wanted to talk about that is not because we wanted to get into trouble or talk about controversial issues, but because these are relevant issues. It's not just about, the titles, the big issues. It's about, your daily life at home. It's about the freedom to make small choices. For many women, that choice is whether or not you want to cover your hair, whether or not you want to fast, whether or not you want to pray in a particular way.
بنات كتيرة بتبقى عندها مشكلة في حرية اختياراتها، اختيارها في الجواز، اختيارها في الشغل.
في مصر وزيها زي باقي الدول العربية غالبا، يمكن شوية ما بتقدرش انها تتكلم بحرية، انها تقول رأيها في الموضوعات بحرية زيها زي
نتكلم عن يعني التدقيق في حياتنا، وازاي نبص على حياتنا وما تبقاش حياتنا هي كده، وبنعملها ليه عشان هو كل الناس بتتعمل كده وهي الحياة كده.
حد فكر قبل كده يحتفل مع ناس غريبة عنه؟ ليه المفروض ان الراجل هو اللي يصرف على البيت؟
بس يا ترى في تكلفة للمعرفة بالسلب؟
One of the most unique things we did in 2019 was to have a 30-day challenge in the month of August when the program was off. We did it on Facebook, and we created a Facebook group where there were about 1,400 women, and every day there would be a video with a different challenge. And the idea behind the 30-day challenge that we did last year was to help people realize that change is possible, but it happens in small steps. Our experiences with the 30-day challenge made us very aware of the fact that our collaborations with all the NGOs we had worked with throughout the year and even in previous years were very important, because these NGOs and the people who worked in them, not just the psychologists and the counselors, but also people who do advocacy, it was very important to strengthen these ties, because, as a media platform, we're able to vocalize some of these concerns, but these people are the ones that this is where we need to go deeper. If anybody would ask me what is the dearest thing to my heart in the journey of Needle and Thread, that would be working with the women in Upper Egypt. Now, we have had a relationship with a group of women in Upper Egypt who are dedicated viewers of the program, but we also ask them to make videos about their own lives and about the women around them, about their communities and so on. Now, these are some of my favorite videos because I feel like they are very, very close to people's lives, people's homes, and they come from an authentic place of real self-expression. I really think that going outside the studio makes a big difference to the kinds of people and the kinds of issues that you can encounter.
أنا أم كرولس كام معايا 3 أولاد اتجوزت عندي 13 سنة كنت عيل بلعب حتى بعد ما اتجوزت برضه كنت بلعب مع العيال.
حالة جميل 43 سنة أنسة.
فايزة اتجوزت ب 12 سنة خدت ولد عمي فاضل 30 سنة ساعة أبوه مات.
أنا اسمي كميلة اتجوزت بعد الثلاثينات.
في 30 سنة دول كنت مخلفة 7 عيال.
لازم تكون متجوزة صغيرة يعني بيقول لك بعد ما تعدي 13 14 سنة ده خلاص ده عانس. السعيد عنده كده عايز يجوز البنت بعد 12 13 سنة بالكثير قوي.
شفت المضايقات من الناس ومن اللي كان معي في البيت برضه، دي مش هتتجوز، دي قعدت، دي اتجوزت كبيرة مش هتخلف، يعني الحاجات دي.
لا طبعا أنا شايف حاجة مختلفة، الجواز مش تحت شرط يكون ضروري. المجتمع اللي حوالينا بيحتم إن الواحد يتجوز.
أبويا ما كانش حد يقدر يقف مع اللي يقوله وهو اللي يتنفذ. طب يا أبويا أنا مش هتجوز دلوقتي، قال هي كلمة.
ما كنتش بعرف أي حاجة، كانش عندي أي مسؤولية. جوزي كان بيسافر ويسيبني بالسنتين 3 وما كنتش عارفة أي حاجة في الدنيا خالص.
المشكلة عند الناس نظرة المجتمع للبنت اللي مش متجوزة إيه، فهم حاطين قيمة الإنسانة دي في الموضوع ده.
والفرق في الحتة دي فين؟ إن الواحدة وهي صغيرة ممكن خلفت في سن صغير، الكبيرة ممكن برضه حتى بعد ما تتجوز بيعيرها بالكلام، يقول لها مثلا أنت دي مش هتخلف، دي كبرت، دي كده.
كنت كده صغير ما عرفش حاجة.
نسب على الأقل بعد ما تخلص تعليمها، إن كانت كلية تستنى ما تخلص كلية.
عشان ما تفتح بيت وما تبقى مشاكل كثيرة وكده. لكن نفسي لو ربنا عطاني بنت تعلمها اللي ما تعلمتوش أنا أعلمه للبنت دي، وزي ما يكتبنا يا ربنا بعد كده تتجوز، بس ما تتجوزش في سن صغير عشان تكون عارفة.
لما يبقى معاها طفل ما بتعرفش تربيه، ما بتبقاش عارفة إن هي هتربيه هو ولا هتربي نفسها.
لما حد يجيني العيال الصغيرين ما شاء الله ما اتجوزش، أقول له حرام عليك.
طبعا مش عايزاها تتكرر مع أي حد، ما هي خلاص هي حصلت مرة والناس أخذت بالها من الموضوع ده، وفي ناس كتير عندها توعية يعني إن هي تجوز بناتها لما تكبر ما تجوزهاش صغير.
بس نفسي لو خلفت بنت ما تقعدش السن اللي أنا قعدت فيه، عشان ما حدش عاير البنت دي يوم من الأيام يقول لها اللي كبرت مش هتخلفي. فنفسي كل بنت في سن يعني ربنا يوفقها إن شاء الله، وما حدش يعايرها بكلام يوجعها.
With all of the things we've done in 2019, the challenge right now that we have before us is to evaluate this work. And I'm very enthusiastic to do focus groups with different women to understand the impact and the breadth of the work that we've done. You know, what does it mean in someone's individual everyday life? There's all this information, all this exchange of ideas, all this back and forth, the counseling, the questions, the interaction. How does that translate into someone's life? Some of our viewers, you know, we've had a lot of interaction with them over the years, but especially this last year, and it's been very, very gratifying in a way to watch how these women have blossomed their different journeys and so on. People don't understand the bravery, the courage it takes to make a shift like that. So some of these viewers that have communicated with us and continue to do, by the way, because the Facebook page is still running, like it's been very encouraging to see their stories and to see, you know, someone flourishing, someone with like dead eyes get a twinkle in their eyes. These are the stories that keep us going. What we're hoping to do in the future is a new program. The working title of this program is Journeys of Joy, and the idea behind it is to film more outside the studio, to film more with real people, to go where they are, to go to the communities and discover, you know, ordinary lives, people, ordinary heroes, people who succeed, who do things that they thought they could never do, and actually succeed at them. And I think what would be very encouraging to viewers and to ourselves as well is to see that it's not only the famous people who succeed, it's not only the people who are on television that we need to know about. There are people in different communities, in ordinary lives, that are doing amazing things, but nobody really knows about them, and their successes are worth noting. And that's our dream. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maggie Morgan, for your incredible and courageous work with and for women. Former Bishop Carsten Nissen is chairman of the Danish think tank on persecuted Christians, a very important initiative. Carsten Nissen will talk about why it is important to advocate. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and please allow me first of all to express my appreciation of the great work done by SAT-7. Also the fact that you work as part of the culture in the different countries where you transmit television and radio. It's very, very important. And now to my topic about the Danish think tank on persecuted Christians. You almost have to be both blind and deaf not to recognize that Christians are persecuted in many areas and parts of the world. We receive reports telling the fate of individuals. Sometimes they are appalling to read. And we also receive reports on systematic persecution and abuse of Christians in places as diverse as the Middle East and China, India, North Korea, Afghanistan, and Nigeria, just to name a few. Therefore, a number of concerned people here in Denmark decided a year ago to set up a think tank for persecuted Christians. We felt that the fate and the situation of persecuted Christians all over the world required a special effort. We could not ignore the situation. We felt we had to respond. We were, however, also aware that religious groups other than Christians are subject to persecution. In view of this, we wanted to document the persecution of our Christian fellows throughout the world without ignoring the persecution suffered by religious groups other than Christians and by those who are non-believers. Therefore, we set as our objective to communicate and disseminate documented knowledge of violations of religious freedom nationally as well as internationally, and to focus on the condition of all religiously persecuted people with particular reference to persecuted Christians. We also wanted to help congregations and others to show solidarity and support for persecuted Christians and to recommend concrete options for action. It is important that the public, the politicians, the churches, the organizations, and the businesses in Denmark be informed about the plight of Christians around the world. A donation from the Danish Borg Foundation made it possible for us to ship in the sea a opinion poll examining the position on various aspects of fundamental human rights, in particular freedom of religion and persecution. And we made a contract with one of the most respected institutes of opinion polls, the Danish Megaphone. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the Megaphone study showed that there is generally a lack of knowledge in the Danish population about the persecution of religious minorities and of non-believers, the extent of persecution, the countries where persecution occurs in particular, and the nature of the persecution. This applies not least to the persecution of Christians and non-believers. At the same time, almost 9 out of 10 Danes believe that freedom of belief and religion is an important human right. Clearly, the majority of Danes believe that new initiatives are called for in this area. More people find that this topic should have more attention in primary education, secondary school, etc., and that the government, parliament, should pay more attention to freedom of religion and belief everywhere in the world. The think tank has subsequently made a number of recommendations to the government and parliament, the media, the churches and the organizations. The report by Megaphone, the recommendations, our strategic plan, and an overview of the members of the think tank have been sent with a covering letter to the Minister for Development, the Minister for Children and Education, and the Minister for Church, as well to all members of the 3 parliamentary committees working on these areas. In addition, we sent similar letters and material to all the bishops and diocesan councils of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Denmark, and I shall confine myself to the recommendations we made to the media, the churches, and the organizations. To the media, we recommend the opinion poll shows that in general there is a lack of knowledge in the Danish population about the persecutions of Christians and other religious minorities, the extent of persecution, the countries where persecution occurs in particular, and the nature of persecution. We call on the media to take greater responsibility for correcting this and to be aware of the role of the news media in people's knowledge of freedom of religion and belief and the persecution of religious minorities. To give the substance higher priority in general news dissemination, to strengthen the training of journalists to facilitate and more widely disseminate news and background on violations of religious and religious freedom. And to the churches, we recommend the opinion poll reveals generally a lack of knowledge among the Danish population, including members of the Danish churches and other religious communities, about the persecution of Christians and other religious minorities, the extent of persecution, the countries where persecution occurs in particular, and the nature of persecution. For example, there seems to be a lack of awareness in the Danish population that persecution occurs in many different countries and that the persecutors belong to different religious groups and ideologies. We therefore call on the churches and congregations to give priority to information and to include people who have fled persecution in the congregations, to teach about the struggle for religious and religious freedom as part of the confirmation preparation, to plan lectures, parishes, and study circles on religious and religious freedom and on the condition in which persecuted Christians live in particular areas and countries. Also, the opinion poll shows that although the responders regard freedom of religion highly important, they do not regard it as important as freedom of expression. Since freedom of expression is a right that sets a framework for our life, and freedom of religion is one of the rights that fills out that framework, we call upon the churches and congregations to fight for religious freedom as an important prerequisite for being a believer in any society. In the 3rd article of the Apostolic Creed, we profess the faith in the Holy General Church, Apostolic Church, which consists of all the people of the earth, regardless of which church confession they belong to, who believe in the triune God. This universal Christian community obliges Christians around the world to show solidarity with their fellow believers in other countries. The certainty that we support them and we pray for them means very much to the persecuted Christians. We therefore call upon the churches and congregations to include intercessions for persecuted Christians in church prayers and Sunday church service, to invite intercession services focusing on special hotspots where Christians suffer persecution, to establish partnership with congregations in areas where it is difficult to live as a Christian congregation, and to support organizations actively carrying out aid and solidarity work for and among persecuted Christians. Moreover, I can inform you that the think tank, together with the Danish bishops of the Evangelical Lutheran Church, just has sent a letter expressing our support and intercession to the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew I of Constantinople on the Hagia Sophia and the Korat Church, now used as mosques. And finally, recommendations for organizations. The Megaphone opinion poll shows that freedom of belief and religion are widely recognized as rights, but at the same time, it is less prominent than freedom of expression widely among Danes. Moreover, the majority has only vague ideas of religions and their sizes. This important work needs to be done. However, that is not what we are supposed to do. The think tank is ecumenical, and we have members from both the Danish Free Churches as well as from the Catholic Church and the Danish National Church. Persecution is a reality for Christians of many different confessions. A work to support them in their different situation should have an ecumenical basis. And finally, I want to tell you why I find it very important that we are advocates. There are organizations in Denmark that work for and among persecuted Christians. This applies, for example, Open Doors, the Danish European Mission, the Bible Society, the Interchurch Council of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Denmark, and several Danish mission societies. They are all doing a great job, which we can only encourage everyone to support. However, the think tank wants to stay clear of political, ecclesiastical, organizational, and commercial special interests, which is why we have invited representatives of these organizations to participate in our work of the think tank as resource people, not as formal members. We have decided that the think tank is not an operational organization that engages in and collects funds for concrete relief among persecuted Christians, but around the hotspots where persecution is taking place, we want to support them, but we are not operating in these areas. Our target group is the Danish public, the politicians, the medias, the churches, companies, and organizations. To help to raise awareness of the importance of fighting for freedom of religion is our task. Therefore, our overall purpose is this sentence: we need to advocate. I remember from my time in the Lutheran World Federation how important it was for Lutheran minority churches to know that they were part of a worldwide community, even though there were little groups sitting in Eastern Europe or in Latin America. That there were some people who thought of them and prayed for them, not least if they were in a country where the environment could be hostile and without an understanding of the necessity and character of religious freedom. It could be in Eastern Europe and South Africa, Namibia before the fall of apartheid, or in Central America, where all opposition against the government and a regime could result in violent attacks. That is why it is important to advocate also in a country as Denmark, where religious freedom is something regarded as given. When religious freedom is given, it might be difficult for you to realize that this is not the case other places in the world. And this is why and how we have chosen in the first year to advocate for persecuted Christians in Denmark. Moreover, we are pleased to announce that we can issue a year's anniversary, a report of the first year at the end of October. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carsten Nissen, for your personal engagement, very qualified, and for the work of the think tank. Now I should have presented, and please do tell if you are there, Ivan, but I think Ivan Nielsen hasn't arrived yet. No? So that would give us an opportunity to switch a bit. Why don't we make some Q's and A's? Discuss, take questions, and then Ivan might come and talk. Okay. So, thank you for all your talks. It may have you have had time to reflect, so we can take a question. If you have a question for any of the people who have been talking, you might have 2 questions. That would be okay as well. Yes. A question for Mr. Nissen. The question is, we have a question. I have to repeat the question. So your question is, what is your view on blasphemy? Where do you draw the line? So please, Carsten Nissen, if you could come up here. And what is your name, sir? Göran, from Sweden. Please.
I personally regret very much that the Danish Parliament some years ago abolished our legislation on blasphemy. If we had not done so, this crazy person, Paludan, could not have insulted with purpose all Muslims in Denmark by placing himself in front of a housing area where they live and burning the Quran for them. So I think that legislation of blasphemy is a right, and it is guarding a society to respect the religion of other people, and also to set a border of what is possible to do in the name of what you believe in, that you must always take into account that what is not important to you might be very, very important to other people. Well, is that an answer to your question? Yeah. Okay.
While you're here, and we have to keep a distance. So I will just do like this because I have to talk into this. Okay. So would any other have a question for Carsten Nissen while he is here, standing here? That would be easier. On blasphemy, on anything else? No? Then
may I just say one thing? We do not regard ourselves in a think tank as a dialogue organization. Other organizations do that work, trying to be in conversation with other religions. It is a very important work, but it's not our work. Our work is to inform about the situation of religious minorities, especially Christian minorities who are persecuted around the world.
Yes, there's a question here. Yes, it would be a good idea to approach the microphone. Thank you. So please introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Bent Dahl Jensen. I'm a journalist, and I write about freedom of religion or belief. And today the word persecuted or persecution have been used very many times. And I think also it is used very often in the debate in Denmark also about the persecution of Christians, but also we have other minorities also in Denmark. What I like is that often it is used without a definition. And I think that's a very big problem, because also we have sometimes got figures that there are that many people who have got persecuted, but in what way? And that I will hope that you will work within the think tank, that we will have a clear definition, because I think there's a problem in Denmark and also in the debate in other countries. For example, some use a very broad definition, and you will have millions of people who have got persecuted. But if you come as asylum seeker to Denmark and apply for asylum, then you will have a very narrow definition of persecution, and you have to prove that your personal are in a situation where you will be persecuted. So I think it's a need of a discussion about who are persecuted, and let us have a good definition. Thank you.
At a very early stage, we had to make that question clear for ourselves. What is persecution? You have a number of different definitions. We decided on the following definition of persecution. Religious persecution is violent and judicial abuse against individuals or groups of people because of their religious beliefs. We understand violence in a broad sense as physical harm, lack of state protection, and theft of land and property. We understand legal law as discrimination in law, for example, blasphemy and apostasy. So you can talk about religious harassment. You can talk about hateful speech. You can talk about discrimination, which is a step higher. But we wanted to be very clear about what definition we would use. And this is a definition. It is violence, physical, and also discrimination in law. And that's why we also have to be clear about the Danish situation, because many people might think that we have also persecution in Denmark of some religious groups. This, I don't think, would be covered by our definition.
Just one other question, because now Eva Nielsen has arrived, but let's just, yes, please come forward and raise your question.
Thank you. My name is Henrik Petersen. I'm working with Danish Mission Council. I'm really encouraged to hear what you're doing in SAT-7 and to see the witnesses from the videos. And I'm curious to know more about how you manage to bring together languages supporting persecution or encouraging Christians on the one side, and on the other side being inclusive, because that would be one of the concerns of Danish Mission Council as well, to find that kind of a bridge in language. So if you could share some of your experiences or reflections, I would appreciate. Thank you.
I will pass the word to Rita.
It's a very good question, and if you talk about language as a language, with different dialects in the Middle East, especially in the Arab world, and then you have like different dialects for Iran, Afghanistan, and also like Turkey, or you're talking about terminologies, and this is something that we've been looking into and struggling with for many years, because the terminology that we use a lot of times among us as Christians is so differently understood by, like people who are not Christians. So we try our best to address issues of salvation, the good news, things that encourage people with a terminology that is between the Christian terminology and our fellow Muslim neighbors. And it's not easy. And saying this, actually, we have like our first ever meeting for terminology use, maybe like October or November, bringing people that are experts in this, like the use of terminology, so we are not misunderstood by, people around us. Now, regarding persecution, the thing that, you have put on the table, it's very interesting. And I love the definition of persecution that was discussed here. In the Middle East, you have a lot of people that see it differently. Some people think that we should be aware and hide what we believe in order not to face unnecessary troubles. But some others say, no, it's a human right. I would like, to share my belief, my religion, my change of religion, even if persecution comes. And I will share just 30-second story from an example from Algeria. This is people that come from Amazighi background, and they, even though they're Muslim, but they hate the Arabs because the Arabs are the invaders in a way or another. And they chose, because of some miracles in their lives, or Christ just appeared to them, or programs that they see on TV, they chose to become Christians, and they're very vocal about it because they consider it as their right. And especially they put, a bit of stress on, government, the Algerian government, to give them the rights to worship. These people I visit, and they were begging that their faces, when they pray at church, to be shown on SAT-7. And I was reluctant and afraid, trying to protect them. And they were more and more pushing me to broadcast church services from Algeria. And I talked to them and I said, why? I mean, do you know that your faces will be shown all over the Middle East and North Africa, and everybody will know that you're Christians? And they said, yes, so? I said, well, I'm trying to protect you. They said, well, from what? And I said, well, persecution, unnecessary. You can pray, why show your faces? And then one person told me, she's a lady, strong woman, she's our producer now. She said, Rita, we consider persecution as a crown we wear on our heads every single day. Please don't take it away from us. For me as a Lebanese, it's just, I don't understand it a lot. But for them, it's really something it's a witness to the whole world about, their freedom to express themselves, and especially, what they believe in. Thank you, Suni.
Thank you for sharing some of the complexity here. Now it's time for Syria. SAT-7 has been reporting on Syria, on how to help with traumas, for example. The situation in Syria is still unstable, complex, and many lives have been lost. So what is the future of Syria? This is what we're going to hear about from Eva Nielsen, who is Special Representative for the Syria Crisis at Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark. Please welcome.
Well, first of all, many thanks for the warm welcome, and many thanks to you, Kurt, for the invitation to speak a bit about Syria today. I should get a bit closer? Okay. I hope you're all well and your families are well in these challenging times, which have not become less challenging with the corona epidemic. Perhaps it should be elevated a bit. Good, yeah, yes. Are we on track now? Yes, great. Yes, I hope you're all well. For sure, one place that is not well is Syria, which has been hit and, let's say, is suffering from one of the most bloody and violent conflict in recent times. I have prepared a bit of some key pointers as, let's say, linked to the conflict, kind of where did it come from, what started it, what has transpired until today, and then I'll end up talking a bit about the future, looking a bit into the crystal ball. I don't want to be, let's say, too pessimistic, but I'm afraid that the prospect I'm going to share with you is not the most promising one, or put differently and a bit more positively. I think we all know what needs to take place in order for us to have a better prospect for Syria and Syrians. So, just to follow on to what was said when I was introduced, to give you a couple of numbers. And obviously when I give numbers from the conflict, I think it is immensely important to bear in mind that behind each number there is a person. So when we talk about thousands and millions that have been affected by the crisis, there's a person behind each number, and that person also has a family, has a community, has a neighborhood, etc. But the numbers are just staggering and somewhat in themselves somewhat prove that this is one of the most bloody and brutal conflict we've seen in recent times. We for sure have hundreds, possibly even close to 1 million of killed, disappeared, and tortured people. We have more than 5 million people who have fled the country, and we have more than 6 million who have been internally displaced within the borders of Syria. Many of them have been internally displaced more than once because they've had to flee as the fighting has shifted inside Syria. I even hear reports from many of my Syrian friends that they have had to flee internally up to as many times as 10 with their families and a few belongings left. And as you all know now from the media and otherwise, you have seen that many of these people are now gathered in very, very informal IDP camps, not least in the northern part of Syria, close to the border with Turkey. And as we all know, it's horrible conditions, and more so now with the corona-19 pandemic, not only knocking on the door, but also having actually had a bearing now all over Syria and also in North Syria with the many IDPs. Talking about numbers, there are a number of positive COVID cases in northwest, that is Aleppo and Idlib, has now reached, I think it is around 300 or 400. That is obviously relatively low, but it should be seen against the test capability, which is fairly low. But the two most shocking numbers are that number has tripled within 6 days. And secondly, on average, around 25% of all tests conducted are positive. So it's not difficult to imagine the trajectory if that continues. Anyways, I think that is what I would say about Corona for now. We all know it is out there, and it is a horrible, horrible thing that society is dealing with right now. Coming back to the conflict, as you all know, it started in 2011 when people took to the streets to demand a better life, human rights, justice, and democracy. Very much kind of in tune with the Arab Spring generally, if you look at some of the other countries in the region. Like other places, but more so in Syria, the regime, the Assad regime, responded with, I think it's safe to say, an iron fist, as it had done previously, even before the uprising in 11, and even was the case during Bashar Assad's father, Hafez al-Assad, during previous times, during the previous decades. And the result was many civilians killed and detained. Supported by the international community, with a few exceptions, the people's protests continued and gained a very impressive momentum despite the regime's continued violent crackdown. I started working on Syria as far back as 2012, so that is approximately 1 year into the conflict. And I was from the start and continued to be highly impressed by the determination, the courage, the dedication of so many Syrians who just want one thing, that is peaceful changes to have better lives for them and their families and their communities. But as time went by, the regime, if anything, only became even more violent in their response to the uprising, and did not even, as we have seen in shocking media footage, shy away from using chemical weapons and even deliberately bombing hospitals and schools. And that somewhat contributed to parts of the opposition gradually becoming more militarized, and slowly but surely the conflict developed into a full-blown armed conflict. As that happened, the conflict also became more and more internationalized and regionalized, with several countries playing out their differences in Syria, with most of the world, most notably except Russia and Iran, standing on the side of the Syrian people in their demands and the opposition. The combination of regime brutality and the fact that the underlying causes, including marginalization, justice or the lack of it, social justice or the lack of it, repression, only got exacerbated. That also contributed to radicalization by some, not least as manifested in the rise of the so-called Islamic State, or Daesh as we also refer to them. Then in late 2015, so that is almost 5 years ago, shortly after Russia intervened militarily, the Security Council unanimously adopted a resolution that sets forth the path for a UN-facilitated, politically negotiated end to the conflict. First, we need a ceasefire nationwide. We need the fighting, the military activity, the weapons to go silent in order to create an environment where a political solution can be pursued. Then, if that were to happen, we need some new governance. By that we mean we need new representation, because in the eyes of the voices of the uprising, the people in the streets, the Assad regime had no legitimacy, and there was for sure no representation. Then we needed a new constitution, because the current one is not seen as sufficiently legitimate by far. It is from 2012 and has come about by the current regime. So you need a new constitutional framework that somewhat sets out how the Syrian society should look like and what the principles and values should guide the society. And then after that, this resolution, UN resolution from 2015, says that there should be UN supervised elections, somewhat to provide a fully free and fair and equal opportunity right for all Syrians in Syria as well as abroad, yet again referring to the more than 5 million people that have fled, with an opportunity to have a say and have a say in the future of Syria. And I think we can all agree that that is a very simple but a very important sequence of events that needs to take place in the political process to get to the point where it will be a Syria for all Syrians. Sadly enough, that was more or less the last time the international community agreed on overall issues when it comes to Syria. We have seen disagreements, not least in the Security Council, among many countries, including those permanent members, and thereby having the opportunity to veto decisions. But we've also seen, sadly enough, that resolution from 2015 has more or less remained a text that has not turned into fruition or has become a reality. but it remains the main reference for the work of the international community and also the work of myself in our support to the UN, and they are really fighting hard to make it happen, but sadly enough the geopolitical environment and the Syrian environment has not allowed it to advance. I also want to mention, coming back to numbers, yet again recalling that there is a phase behind each number. The resolution also establishes the need for confidence-building measures. That means that basically the opposition and the regime, there needs to be something that they have in common, because common ground is actually the best way to advance a solution that everybody can subscribe to. Here the release of detainees deserves mentioning. Numbers. As of now, as of today, it is estimated that almost 150,000 people have been detained in Syria, out of which 90% at the hands of the Assad regime. So if we say 150,000, many are in detention still, many have sadly enough disappeared, or they may still be in detention but are incommunicado. And if you multiply that with numbers of average family size and community size, couple that with all the killed, add to that the number of tortured, it is very difficult to see how not almost everybody in Syria has been affected by the conflict, one way or the other. Yeah. I should also say that many, if not all, of the conflicting parties in Syria, they have human rights, let's say, human rights violations on their conscience. But I would also yet again highlight that we continue to see repression by the Assad regime. We have seen that even in areas that have recently been retaken by Damascus, southwest Syria, and other areas where actually the moment that the fighting stops and there's a bit of space in the streets and people yet again voice their demands about either better life or justice or accountability, or as basic as just want to know, get info about the family's destinies if they have been detained and disappeared years ago. We still see a very violent reaction from the Syrian security forces to that, and until today we see many arrests, out of which many also are incommunicado and hence somewhat sadly enough are disappeared. I should also say that we still see pockets of extremism, even though Daesh has been defeated territorially. Daesh, the so-called Islamic State, as you know, they no longer control territory, but we still see elements, cells around that are also trying to benefit from instability, general dissatisfaction and repression, and generally chaos. Numbers. Even though the regime with the support of its allies has retaken some territory the last couple of years, as we stand here today, or I stand here today, there's still approximately 30% of Syria's territory that is outside regime control. And less than half of the Syrian population pre-conflict, so the Syrian population in 2010 and 11, they live in those 70%. So you can say, as we stand here today, or I stand here today, the Syrian regime only controls approximately 70% of the territory, in which approximately half of the Syrian population live. That says a lot about how divided the country is, how fragmented it is, and if anything, that this conflict is far from over. Equally important, the underlying causes of the conflict remain unresolved to date. And the bottom line is that if we don't see fundamental changes, as per that Security Council resolution I talked about before, ceasefire, new governance, new constitution, and free and fair elections, the prospects for Syria and the Syrian people are bleak, as such changes are essential for a good prospect that's characterized by stability and better lives. So it is a bit of a, some would say even chicken and egg, where do you start? But I normally leave that aside and somewhat mainly focus on what for me is the bottom line, having worked with Syria now for closing in on 9 years or 10 years. that these changes, they need to take place before it is realistic to talk about a stable Syria where there is a potential for better lives for all Syrians. Talking about that, all Syrians, I would also say a few words about minorities and sectarianism. Yes, in many cases, minorities, religious, ethnic, and otherwise, they have felt the brunt and continue to feel the brunt of the conflict, as they do, sadly enough, in more or less any conflict, whether it's armed or unarmed. That is also the case in Syria. That is absolutely unacceptable. It should be condemned, it is being condemned, and it should be addressed, for sure. But here, I think we also deserve to mention that I'm sure you're aware that the Assad regime has, to a very large extent, succeeded in creating an image that the regime is the guarantor, the protector of minorities, and even the only protector of minorities. The realities on the ground show otherwise. For a starter, the regime's behavior caused the deadly conflict in the first place, in which the minorities have been suffering and are suffering so much. For another, the repression has been targeting everybody across the board of Syrian segments who have voiced opposition, whether they are minorities or not. Concretely, we have seen Christians, Assyrians, Kurds being targeted, some in prison, others forced to leave the country. It is also well documented that the regime has attacked churches. I have just checked the latest documentation this morning, so this is a fresh data. An organization, one of the most active and well-positioned organizations called Syrian Network for Human Rights, they have documented that a total of 126 Christian places of worship have been damaged since the start of the conflict. And the regime is responsible for 2/3 of those. With that, I'll end. Please do ask any question. Also, I would definitely encourage you to stay in contact with me afterwards. Also, all of you out in cyberspace, so that we can continue the discussion about Syria and make our own humble contributions to hopefully a better prospect for Syria, so that they can see peace and stability that they all Syrians and Syria deserve. Thank you.
But please stay. Thank you so much, Ivan Nielsen. Yes, I think we should take a couple of questions. And Carsten Nissen, if you would please come forward so we can hear your voice. Former Bishop of Viborg, Chairman of the think tank. Please.
Thank you very much for this information. It's very needed. I cannot help, maybe it's not appropriate, but since you are an employee of the Danish government, let me ask you quite frankly, in the light of what we just have heard, how can the Danish state then decide to send people back to Syria who have fled to this country?
Thank you for that question, not entirely unexpected. But let me also say it's good to see somebody from my own local hood. I grew up not far from Viborg, so yeah. Well, my answer is not surprising either, given where we are today, is that, as you have heard the government express in different ways, is that the decision that a number of asylum seekers no longer have the need and the right to protection in Denmark has been made by the Independent Refugee Appeals Board, where a judge is sitting at the end of the table. So it's not a part of the government. And the government is then relating to those decisions. But you may also be aware that, as has been confirmed by the government, at this point in time, the Danish government will not forcefully send refugees back to Syria, We encourage voluntary return. There are some support programs available, but at this point in time, we do not send refugees back to Syria because it clashes with our foreign policy on Syria, because it would entail a degree of contact and relation to the Syrian regime that is against our current policy, as we have in common with the EU and other countries.
We have time for one last question. If not, I thank you, Ivan. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the other participants. Now we have something on the agenda which is not written in the program, a surprise. So I will hand over the word to Chairman of the Danish Bible Society, Peter Andreasen. Please come forward.
Thank you, Sine, and thank you to SAT-7 for allowing us to use this small break in your program for Vision Europe 2020. We will take the occasion here to hand out the annual prize for the Danish Bible Society for 2020. And before I name the person, I want to say a few words about the prize. The Danish Bible Society Prize is handed and awarded to a person who must be recognized for a special effort to make the Bible present in society. With the award, the Bible Society will create awareness of the Bible and its living significance and relevance to people today. The prize consists of 10,000 Danish kroner and a framed original page from King Christian IV's Bible. With the award, the Bible Society will create awareness of the Bible and its living significance. Furthermore, with the award, the Bible Society will create awareness of the Bible Society's work to make the Bible known and present. I'm honored and proud to announce that the Danish Bible Society's prize for the year 2020 goes to Kurt Johansen from SAT-7. And before I continue, please join me at the podium, Kurt, because I want to motivate our decision. Since August 2000, Kurt Johansen has been Secretary General of the Christian TV station SAT-7, Europe, Asia, and the Pacifics. Like few, SAT-7 has managed to disseminate Bible text pedagogically and relevantly to areas of the world where it can be difficult, if not possible, to get physical Bibles out to Christians. SAT-7 gives Christians a voice in areas where they are under strong pressure. SAT-7 conveys Christian values to people of all ages and breaks down prejudices about Christians and Christianity. In SAT-7, Kurt Johansen has made an exceptional effort to get the Bible out into the world. He works at high diplomatic level. He's characterized by stamina, patience, orderliness, and great skills. At the same time, he is a cheerful and humble person. Also, Kurt is traveling almost, not all days, but I've heard around 150 days in average a year around the world to collect money, and he has collected an impressive amount of money. And he has also traveled the world many times to speak on behalf of the persecuted and discriminated Christians. Kurt is a world-class diplomat, and foreign minister diplomats like to listen to him in all discretion, of course. Dedication, caring, humorously, understated, a loner with a big heart for the community, that is words that is close connected to Kurt. Kurt's experience and insights are listening to around the world, and he has a quiet and wise approach to people, an enormous knowledge about discrimination against Christians, which he likes to call the oppression of Christians. The roots of Kurt Johansen goes back to Herning, which is an area, well, close to my heart because I come also from Herning, but it's also a region which is characterized of entrepreneurial skills, a can-do attitude, and also a stronghold for Bible reading and mission. And you, Kurt, you brought all the best from what you have learned and inherited from that region. And you brought it to the world. Kurt Johansen never retires. SAT-7 and the spread of the gospel is his life mission. And the world could certainly benefit from more Kurts. The Bible page that comes with the Bible Society Award for 2020 is, as mentioned, from Christian IV's Bible from 1632, and is from Luke chapter 12, verse 3, where Jesus tells the disciples that what they have whispered in the ears of the people in the chambers shall be preached from the roofs. I think that's a very suitable scripture for a TV channel and Kurt's life mission. So, congratulations, Kurt.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Very honored. I'm very humble. When Birgitta, the General Secretary, called me, I was about the prize. If I was willing to accept it, I was shocked. And I said, I don't really belong on that list of winners of this prize. But I take this prize on behalf of SAT-7 and all the producers and staff, and also all the supporters that are in this room and on the streaming around us. So we do all this together. And we take this prize as something we get together for the glory of God and for the nice and wonderful and perseverant work that SAT-7 has done over so many years. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Congratulations, Kurt. You really deserved it. Now it's time to close this part of the conference. Thank you for engaging. Thank you to all of the participants for sharing insight, knowledge, and hard-lived experience. Now it's time for lunch. We will try to live stream again at 2:15 for the celebration of 20 years since launch in Europe. Thank you so much for now. Thank you.
I should also say that all the partners of SAT-7, you're welcome to participate in the AGM, the annual general meeting. It will be held here next to the dinner or the lunch at 1:15. So please be there, and anyone is welcome to participate as well.
Yes, we